Hello out there, salut à tous and hallo, leute. If you are new here, welcome. If you are already a fan, welcome back. This channel, Polybabble, is where I track my language learning progress in French and German. In this video, I'm going to be celebrating my 365-day benchmark of Duolingo practice and sharing just any reflections that I have from that experience. I've been practicing on Duolingo with French and German for 365 days, but they have not been consecutive. I did use a ton of streak phrases, but that's okay. And I just kind of wanted to document that and talk about how I felt about it. I do remember that I was recording some of my earlier lessons and I was like breezing through the French lessons, but the German lessons I was moving quite a bit more slowly because, I already had a little bit of French under my belt, but absolutely zero German under my belt. So I was recording some of the earlier lessons just so that I could hear what I sounded like when I first started German and just, see the different points that I may have struggled with. The other thing that I remember is that I was really meticulous about reading the tips that they have for both languages, just so that I could reinforce whatever it was that they were trying to teach in that lesson, instead of just doing the exercises and not really knowing what the concept was that they were trying to teach. The tips were usually really helpful, but sometimes I was just I probably have to Google this just to get more information. Sometimes they're very short. By the way, Duolingo does not know who I am. They're not sponsoring this video or anything like that. It just happens to be the tool that I'm using. So I'm talking about how it's been going. Since I've only been doing one lesson a day, basically in each language, I haven't made massive strides or anything in my language learning progress. But I don't have any time constraints to learn the language. It's not like I'm traveling somewhere or, I'm not in school to learn these languages. So I'm kind of just enjoying the process and learning how my brain works and seeing how other people's brains work and getting to know people by going to the different events for other people that are interested in learning languages.
I guess that's a reflection.
I think since it's been a year, there's a part of me that's you should know this and that and the other. The other day I was in my German event and the host said that we were a semester through, and I was like, what? That's a semester? Knowing that I don't know how to count and a couple other things that I keep mentioning, I still don't know how to do this. It doesn't feel like it's been that much time, but it has. And when I think back to when I was learning French in high school, I didn't start actually speaking. I don't think I was conversational until I got out of high school. I took 2 semesters in college, and one of them was a conversation class, and I'm pretty sure that's when I started being conversational. Maybe a little bit before, but not as much as after I took that class, because that class was mostly in French. Okay, so here are my takeaways, thoughts or reflections about having done Duolingo for 365 days. I think the first one that I would say is just about your account. I'm learning 2 languages and I just have 1 account, and that's fine, but if you really want to make use of the stats that they're giving you, and also just knowing where you are with each language, you might want to consider having more than 1 account. It might be a little bit of a hassle because you'll have to log into 2 places, but when I get my emails about, your streak freeze saved the day, or, just how many words you learned and things like that, it's not broken down by language. It's either a combination or they're only giving it to you for whatever your active language is at the time that the email goes out. If you're actually looking at that information, it can be a little bit is this accurate or not? On the downside, you won't be able to kind of show off that you know that you're learning a bunch of languages, but if you're really trying to keep track of what you're doing and you don't want to keep track of it by yourself, I would consider using more than 1 account. Okay, so number 2 is that Duolingo can actually just be 5 minutes a day. Depending on what level you're trying to get to with your languages, Duolingo is a really good place to start. It'll get you started. I don't think anyone should think that they're going to become 100% fluent only using the Duolingo app. I mean, there are other things to Duolingo, and I'll talk about those a little bit, but I think it's a really good place to start, and it can just be 5 minutes a day, especially if you're not under any kind of pressure, self-imposed or otherwise, to learn the language that you're trying to learn very quickly. There's no reason why over time, a little bit every day, that you can't, get to your language goals. So the next one is that Duolingo should just be one tool in your arsenal while you're learning languages. A lot of people will tell you just use one app, which I think is kind of true, like when you're first getting started. But I do think that as you start to, for example, I haven't learned the numbers yet from the app. There's no reason why I can't just say, okay, I'm going to go to another resource just to learn numbers. And you can get that from anywhere. So I do agree with like maybe just having one app or in like one book or something like that. But I think that Duolingo or any app, they're just one tool in your arsenal. And that's partially because you want to be able to hit all areas of like learning, reading, writing, listening, speaking, all of that, just work on your memory and recall. And so there are other options out there to help with that. I also think that, if you're just using Duolingo and that's the only thing, they're going to present the information to you in a certain way. And they're going to have their sentences structured in a certain way. They're going to use a certain vocabulary list. As you move forward, you might want to be around native speakers more and hear how people really use the language day in and day out, and see how other people and or apps are presenting information, just to have a more thorough and varied experience with the language. I would say that's also something that I think about when I think about pronunciation. You hear all the time people from the north or the south of whatever country, they just sound different. The way that things are pronounced on Duolingo might be different than what you would hear on a YouTube video or in another app, for example. For me personally, I like to have a couple of different options when I'm learning. Okay, so coming in at number 4, making use of the Duolingo discussions. So Duolingo has this thing called discussions, and you can click on it and people are just talking about different things. And there are probably several people who have had the same questions that you've had, or who are wondering the same things, or who are celebrating things like their 365-day journeys and things like that. And there's just a wealth of knowledge on there. And if you have time, skim it. Get to know some of the resources that people use for learning different languages. You're able to filter them to focus on just like the language that you're learning. So they also have, I don't know if it's called discussions, but when you're on the desktop version and let's say you are going through the lessons and you get something wrong, there'll be a little like, I don't know if it's a red flag or something at the bottom of the screen that'll be like, discuss. And you can basically go to that and look at a thread of other people who may have gotten it wrong, who are asking like, why isn't this accepted? And then you'll also find other people who are explaining the concept of why it's supposed to be written or said a certain way. So that's always really helpful. Okay, so number 5 is just that the Duolingo events are really, really, really cool. Maybe I've been lucky and I've just gotten like really nice hosts and really welcoming people. If you haven't attended one, I would highly suggest trying it out. You can learn a lot of different vocabulary, or people learn in different ways. So they may have picked something up from somewhere, and then when you all get together to discuss things, you're also picking things up from them and they're picking things up from you, and people are asking questions and figuring things out together. It's really nice. And then the hosts, depending on what type of event it is, they will also be knowledgeable about the languages. So if you have questions, you can ask them. And yeah, if you get a chance, try to find an event that has a native speaking host, or just other native speakers that maybe might attend to help out. That's always really good, so that you can see how people are using words and vocabulary like in real life, and different phrases that you might hear. You can ask them like, what is the story behind that? Like, what does it actually mean? If you do attend the event and maybe you're a like super beginner, just try. Sometimes they break us out into small groups, and it's very painful to sit there and like you're in a group of 3 people and like 1 or more people, they're just like, oh, I don't know how to say this. And I'm like, just try. We want to interact with each other. So
don't be that person.
Okay, so the next one is that, I may have already touched on this, but the things that you learn in Duolingo need to be reinforced. It'd be impossible for me to just go through a skill in one time and just be like, yep, got it. Like, that's not gonna happen. I think this kind of just goes along with how I said like Duolingo should be one tool in your arsenal. So, you know, if you learn a skill on Duolingo, it would be best to Google it or get a book that also has other exercises around that skill or topic, you know, just to learn more vocabulary around it, learn more usage around it, so that whatever you're learning is reinforced. Okay, so the next one is to keep in mind that Duolingo gets updates once in a while. And that could mean that you log in and you were at a certain spot in your tree, and then you're just now at a different spot in your tree. And maybe there are some skills that have popped up that you haven't done, so it looks like you have to go back and do them. Things will just be changed around. So just keep that in mind. People tend to get in an uproar, like some people really are like, oh my gosh, you know, like I have to go back and do this and that and whatever. You know, you can always test out if you feel like you're moving backwards conceptually and you already know that thing. Along the lines of that, the next one is that the mobile version is different than the desktop version. I prefer the desktop version. It feels less like a game and more like I'm actually learning a language. The mobile version has like this concept of hearts. If you get a certain number of things wrong, I think they actually make you either buy more hearts, almost like you had 3 lives and now they're gone, or you would have to stop for the day. And I don't really want to have to deal with that. So I just use a desktop version. And I think the other thing, I don't know if the tips are available in the desktop version. But yeah, there are just a lot of differences. Like in the mobile version, you have gems versus those Lingot things. They have treasure chests and different like challenges that you can join. It's much more gamified on the mobile version, I believe, than on the desktop version. I think I've only used the mobile version once or twice because I wasn't, you know, able to be at my computer.
I don't really like it.
Okay, so the next one is to make sure that you're getting speaking prompts on Duolingo. There was a time when I was using a certain browser to do Duolingo, and then I changed it, and I was like, I haven't had to say anything in like so much time. I think you need to be in Chrome in order to get speaking prompts. I don't know if they work in Firefox or Safari, I'm not sure, but for me, I had to change back to Chrome in order to get on the desktop speaking prompts where they'll say something and then they'll ask you to like repeat it. If you can get that on your computer, you should. Okay, so the next one is to pay attention to the accents. Duolingo tells me this all the time. And this was something that I used to struggle with when I was in high school. In high school French, my teacher would take off -1 point for all of the accents that I missed. It is important to pay attention to them because sometimes when I'm with German, when I'm going to read, I'm not exactly even sure how to read like the umlauts and things yet. So it's important to know that they're there. So in my brain, I can know like that I have to change the way that I'm saying it. So basically, you need the accents to be able to know how to read. Okay, so the next one, I think this is number 11, I think. The next one is to keep a notebook or a journal. It's just another way to reinforce what you learn. It can be really helpful to go back to your notes to see the different things that you either struggled with or that helped you to get past something that you struggled with. I've seen some people on YouTube like go back through their journals years later. I think that's really cool to be able to do, just to see like what you were learning and what you were writing down and what helped you push past learning a certain topic. Okay, so the last one is to do something every day. I recently did a video where I talked about how I, had stopped doing lessons, and you could actually feel the regression of learning happening. And so if you keep up with it, it'll be much better than, if you go a week or a month or several months, like someone I know, without practicing. Doing something every day just helps to keep things top of mind. Okay, so I have a bonus reflection, I guess I'll call it. I'm actually curious as to like how many people have heard of this. There's a site called Duome, I think. It's just a site that kind of aggregates information from Duolingo. It compiles like your statistics and things like that for the languages that you're learning. And it has all the rankings for, I believe, like everyone who's on Duolingo in its totality. I haven't actually clicked on anybody else's profile, but I think they have lists that are like, these are the people who have had like the longest streak. But for yourself personally, like you can see for every lesson that you do, the skills, you can see like what your strengths are. I think I stumbled upon it just by hearing somebody talk about it or not hearing, but like reading somebody's comment on the Duolingo discussions. I guess just one thing to keep in mind is if you do visit that site and you're using more than one language, it goes according to whatever language you're on in Duolingo at the moment. So if you wanted to see stats for a certain language, make sure you're in that language on Duolingo and then go visit the site. And if you wanted to change languages, you would go back and change it in Duolingo. It's not a huge deal, but that is just one thing to note. Yeah, those are my thoughts on 365 days of Duolingo usage. I think that Duolingo is definitely a really good tool, especially for people who are just getting started and want something consistent to use and consolidate it all in one place. And I think that when you consider that there is, like the discussions, the events, if you're in French, podcasts, I don't know if they have them in other languages yet. Considering all of those different things, I think it's a really good tool and it's free. I mean, you can't get any better than that. Yeah, so I can't believe that it's been 365 days, but I'm excited for the next 365. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching. See you soon. À plus und tschüss.